Hi, my name is Ben, and today we're going to be building a swappable hotend for the Prusa style printers, specifically the original Prusas, and it's going to be for a 3mm swappable hotend, so you can swap out between 3mm and 1.75mm filament. So let's get started. So we're going to start with the printed parts. So here, we'll take a look in the box. So I've already replaced one piece, the back plate, with a piece that has a bigger area over here so that we can fit the wire connectors, such as these inside. Here, I'll show you. If you look, the blue piece has a much wider opening right here, just so that the wires will be able to fit through much easier. So after that, we got the front piece of the extruder cover body. So I already put the nuts in this piece. You got one here, and you got one in there. You can see that. And then we also got the idler pulley. And we also got the fan duct. There's also one more major part that's not in this box because it had to go through many revisions. So let me get that. So that would be the extruder body. So here we got the first version that's actually broken because I had to go through so many that I had to take the nuts out because I thought it would work. So I actually started using a E3D-V6 clone, and when I printed this, I'm like, great, this will work, it fits. But then I got my E3D-V6 Bowden 3mm from Matter Hackers, and it was about 4mm too big, so I had to redesign it. So it was actually 5mm too big, my bad. So when I redesigned it, I actually thought that it was 4mm in my calculations because I did bad math. So I have a 4mm version which it doesn't fit in, and then I have the one that it actually fit in for the first time. So I was really happy, and then I realized I forgot to widen the hole for 3mm Bowden tubing so that it will fit. So then here I printed the next one, but then again, so this one actually, everything worked out except that when you put the motor in and line the filament up with the feeder pulley, it actually did not feed properly because the pulley was too far inward, so it was actually like completely covering this tube. So I had to redesign it once more to fix that problem, and now we have a working one. So we're going to be using this, and all the files for the parts that I use will be online. And I got all these from Thingiverse, from user. I'll have to look that up and put it in a thumbnail. Alright, so next box we got the electronics. Alright, so here are the electronics. So this is actually electronics and hardware. So we got 100 square nuts. We got the E3D-V6 kit that I already put together. I also soldered these wires so that, because that's how Prusa has them with the connector, it will not fit. So I went ahead and soldered those before the video. We got the 50mm by 15 blower fan with the 3 wires. We got the Pinda Probe V2. We got the 40mm Noctua fan. We got the feeder gears. Some E3D V6 hardware. And the extruder motor. Oh, and also we have extruder springs and screws that I asked Prusa for because they don't sell these anywhere. And I asked them what size the springs were, but I could not find them anywhere. So they were kind enough to send them to me. Alright, so next we got some more hardware and a little bit of electronics. I guess it's kind of hardware. So we got a big screw set. So we got 30, 35, 40, 45, and 50mm screws. We're only going to need a couple of these, but it's good to have and it'll last you for a while. And then we got a big kit of M2, M3, and M4 screws. And this is going to be plenty. You're only going to need a couple. And then there's also a kit of wire makers. So this is going to be the way that we make them swappable. So we're going to have to use these and a crimper to cut the wires and then make connections like these. These are my test ones. And here, focus. Alright, it's not going to focus, but pretty much these wires will just be able to plug together. There'll be, I believe, 21 wires that we're going to need to do, but it'll be repeatable, so it should be nice and easy. Alright, next there's going to be zip ties. Obviously, it's a project. You'll always need zip ties. And then there's also going to be 12mm cable wrap, which is what's used to keep all the wires together and not go all over the place. And finally, we got all the tools. So we got flush cutters, the Prusa pliers, the crimper, wire strippers, the 2.5mm Allen key, some vice grips, a Phillips head screwdriver, a cutting knife, and calipers, which I'm not sure if we'll need. Alright, so I got all the parts I need in front of me. I got my screws, I got my printed pieces, I got my hardware, I got my electronics, and I'm going to try to use these are all my Prusa spare parts, so I'm going to try to use these as much as I can, but if I run out, I'm going to use the screws that I bought, and I'll let you know how many you need, if any, outside of what Prusa already provides you with all the spares. Alright, so here we go. We're going to do a time lapse. Alright, so something I forgot to mention was the Bowden tube. So I don't know exactly how long it's going to be, but I will write it on the screen, and you'll know exactly how long to make it, so that when it sits in here, it should go right up to where the extruder driver will be. Alright, so I just found a design flaw. I am going to try and fix it, and I will hopefully be back tomorrow night. Alright, so as you can see, we now have the new one printed. So what happened was, when, as I said, the extruder either made me have to redesign this top piece, and I had to offset it 3mm, but I never re-offset this entire body to be realigned with this piece, so it's 3 millimeters off, as you can see. So that's not good. So that wouldn't work. So I just recatted, moved it back over, and now it looks pretty good. So let's resume the time lapse. Alright, so I was finally able to get the extruder in. So what happened was the hole for the PTFE tubing was a little bit small. So I actually grabbed a drill and a 6 millimeter bit and I drilled out the hole. Now it fits, but I will revise the STL files so that you should be able to do this very easily without a drill. Alright, so that concludes building it. So I'm actually off to my local maker fair, and I will be back in a couple of hours. Alright, so I went ahead and actually unplugged all the wires for the Hotend except for the filament sensor, which I just unplugged from the filament sensor itself, because we want to keep that separate, and we're not actually going to be cutting that one down. So now that we have the extruder out, here, we need to decide how long we want to actually cut these. So so that we could, because we want to be adding the wire ends to this. So to do that, we need to find a place to cut them. So I think around here would be good. So we're just gonna cut the wires, and also make sure to give yourself some wiggle room just in case you accidentally cut the wires down a little bit. Alright, so now that we have that length, I'm going to post my length on the screen right now. So now we're actually going to strip these wires and add on the crimps. So I'm not going to go into depth on how to do it because there's multiple tutorials online, but let's just get started. So quick update, I got my first one done, but just something that's very important is that if you are to do this, make sure that when you use connectors. So I'm going to use a 2x4s and a 1x4 for the hot end. So when you're doing these, make sure that you are doing one for each side. So this one's the Noctua fan and the motor. This is the Pinda probe and the blower fan, the 50x15 fan. And then this one's the hot end. Just to make sure that, like, if you mix the heater for the hot end and the motor, you wouldn't be able to get this off. So make sure that when you do it, you're doing them in groups by side and where they're coming from. So the Pinda and the blower fan and the Noctua, the motor, and then the heater and thermistor. Alright, so I just finished up all the wires for this part. They all work pretty well. The next part would be to cut down the wire wrap to make sure, and then cut it to length for this, and then you use the rest of the part to actually put all the wires that we just cut off on the other side, put them back into the board, and spiral them up to here, so that you can now put connectors on those wires. And something to remember when you do those, make sure that they will align properly with the exact wires that you put this way, so to make sure that nothing will happen and all the wires are still going straight to the same wire. Alright, so I was able to get the cable wrap on, and as you can see, there's a zip tie right here that's actually to keep the heater wire and thermistor wires down below, so that these other wires could stay wrapped, because when we take this off, we're going to want to have these wires be able to go under, and you don't want to have to unwrap this every time. So now let's actually attempt to take it off and see how it goes. Alright, let's cut some zip ties. Alright, so now that the zip ties are cut, we should be able to just unscrew this. Alright, so now that all the screws are undone, as you can see, because we have the big one, it should be able to just slide right off. Here, I'll get the smaller one. So this one has a smaller hole. As you can see, these will fit through not very easily, and it doesn't go on with this tube on. So since we have the enlarging piece, it just slides straight on and off and makes for easy access. So since we have this off, we could just undo this screw, and this screw, and we should be able to take the entire hot end off. Alright, so I actually just realized, because of this tubing, we won't be able to get it off because it doesn't go straight through here. So it won't actually matter if you want to put this in, because this is going to have to come off either. Alright, here we go. So now we have the hot end, and it looks pretty good. The wire's pretty solid, and now we just gotta do the exact same thing to the other hot end and do it to the other side of the wire so that we can actually connect them to the main board. Alright, so now that we have created the hot end, we can now plug all these wires that we cut off from the other side back into the board. So obviously you can actually just leave these in if you want, but I didn't think of that. Alright, so this is getting close to a place where we're going to have to start cutting some wires. I'm actually just going to... Oh, these actually overlap a little bit. So I'm going to take the filament sensor wire and just zip tie it down, because we're only going to need this if we're printing the 1.75 and you have it there. So you'll just be able to cut the zip tie and move it whenever you, and use it whenever you want. I'll cut this again. Alright, so now let's cut all these wires, or strip the tips, and put connectors on them. So I'm actually going to be using the male on these. I use the female on the other ones because when this is taken off, I don't want to have the male on these just in case they bend. So that's why I use female here and I use the male here, because they're always going to be plugged into something. Alright, let's go. Alright, so I have the first 4 done. Here we go. So, since we want to make sure that these are lined up so that we make sure that nothing will short out, and nothing, or it's a lot harder for something to go wrong when I put these in. These are going to go, let's say this way, so that both sides are facing the same way. We're going to put the black wire in. Alright, then the red wire for the thermistor. And then this is non-polar for the heater, so obviously you'd line up the same colors, but this doesn't really matter too much. Alright, so now that I have this one done, I'm actually going to undo some of the wires just so I could test the heater and the thermistor. Alright, so I got the power cord. I'm going to plug it in. Let's actually connect this first. So wires are lined up. And all these are not active, so those don't matter. Let's power it on. And as you can see in the camera, I'm going to go to preheat, PLA, and let's just see if they both work. And it looks like it is. So we have a successful first attempt. Alright, so I got all the wires done. I unzip tied this. I fixed, I put this on all the way, and I've remounted the extruder and put all the cables back on. So now let's connect them and let's see what happens. Alright, so let's preheat the printer now. And we can tell it is now that the temperature is actually going up right now. So that means the thermistor and the heater cartridge are both plugged in correctly. So we know 3 out of the 6 things are working. Let's see how this goes. Alright, so it is almost heated up now. And let's try loading a filament. Let's see, is the filament sensor on? Alright, it's loading, it's working. Let's see. Alright, so my filament sensor was off, that's why it wasn't working. Alright, so this camera is back up now. As you can see, the filament did come out. It didn't come out quite right, but let's see. Let's go to settings, move axis, extruder, and we should be able to get more to come out. Oh, it's coming out better now. Where is it? So now that's coming out, we can actually start a print now. So once it's done moving, which it is, let's clear the bed. We can, and now let's actually calibrate the Z-axis, because last time I used it was for the last time I used it was for printing with the 3mm Hotend. So let's calibrate it. So first layer calibration is what we'll do. I forgot to point out, so the Noctua fan is on. So I'm going to actually, let's see, will the pin to probe work? Yep, the pin to probe is working. So that means everything that we crimped and put caps on, it's working. So let's see how the print comes out after this. Alright, it's actually looking pretty good already. looks like the same setting can be used. I guess it just happened to work out for me. I don't know how it will work out for you, but now let's print a benchy. Alright, and we're off. Alright, so I got the first benchy done. So now I have unplugged the wires, and now I'm going to take off the hot end, and we're going to put the 3mm one on. So I actually did these crimps while this was printing, just to make it go faster. Alright, so now we got this off, and you could actually take the 40mm screw that goes up here and put it off to the side for now, because the way when I adjusted all these pieces, this hole got shifted all the way up, so I just put a M3 by 30mm screw in there to keep the motor in place. And now we can actually put this one on. So you're going to put it on the same way that you normally would. When you when you actually build the printer the first time, where you put the wires to the side, then you're going to put them through the holes on the side, or the slots on the side. And you line up the screws. You screw them in. Alright, so now that all the screws are in, we can put the nylon filament in the wiring. I cut it in half, or cut it not really in half, but I cut it and the other pieces in the wiring, other part of the wiring, and then we could put the tube on, the wire, yeah. And when it's at the right length, we can add in the heater and the thermistor. And now we can take some zip ties and zip tie this all down. Alright, so now that everything is zip tied, we can connect the wires, so make sure that you connect the right ones. So we have the motor one right here. We have the other one, let's line it up. And then we got the heater. Alright, so now everything is bundled. It moves just fine. And now we can power it on and calibrate. Alright, so the printer is now just over 200 degrees. I will grab some, this is Protopasta iridescent ice. Nice wet clear filament. We're going to use this to calibrate. And then we're going to print with a different filament later. So we're going to go into the menu, we're going to press load filament, and it's going. Alright, so now filament is loaded. I'm going to connect my printer to the computer so that we can send and receive some terminal messages. Alright, so I now have prompter face open, so we can go ahead and connect to the printer. So now the printer is on. I'm going to try to keep this heated, so no preheat. And now we're going to need a measuring instrument and a Sharpie or a pen, something that I can write on the filament. And we're going to want to mark 100 millimeters, so 10 centimeters on the filament. And now we can send a, what is it? It is a G0, or no, not G0. We need a G1, E100. Alright, that didn't go well. Let's check the measurement. So, how about instead of doing that, we're going to extrude 100 millimeters through there, and we'll press enter, and press extrude. That's coming out a lot better, and it's actually going through this time. Alright, so now we can see it is actually about like a millimeter off from the top. So that was actually pretty good. You can calibrate that if it's more off. When I did it yesterday, it worked pretty well, so I'm not going to touch the settings right now. But what you do, you'd send a M503. And you'll look for this right here. So right now mine is set to 280. So you'd use that number to calculate the percentage error and adjust that accordingly by sending a M92E, whatever your number is, and then sending an M500 to save the value. So since we're not going to be changing the value, we're going to go into calibration, first layer calibration. Yes, filament is loaded, and it should start a print. Alright, so now the print is starting, and we'll just adjust the Z. So it actually looks pretty good. I'm going to leave it. But something I actually forgot to mention was before you do this, you're going to want to go to Prusa's website and go to the support, then say that you have a kit and look for the building instructions, and in the Mark III or Mark IIs, look for how to adjust the Pinda probe's height, which would be in step 9, the pre-flight check. And use that to make sure that your Pinda probe is at the right height. And once you do that, then move on to this calibration. And I think we're good, so I'm just going to restart the printer. I have a benchy sliced on here. I'm going to do that, and then we'll do a compare the results. Alright, be back in a few. Alright, so here I got 3 benchies on this one, printed in 1.75mm filaments before all the modifications in Blue Matter Hackers PETG build series. We had this one printed in Skin Polyalchemy Elixir, and it was on the 1.75 right after the modification. And this one is Filamentum Vertigo Gray, the original, in the 3mm filament after the upgrade. So they all actually look really good. You can see there's a little stringing on this one, but that's also mainly because it's PETG. And for some reason on the hull of all of them, I don't know if you could see, but there is some artifacting. It's a lot easier to see it on this one. But I'm assuming that's a slicer error, not a printer error, because it's on all of them. But overall, I think this was a success. They all came out very nicely, and I'm looking forward to what I can do with this.